Hello fellow coder, welcome back to our lessons where we were diving into how to build a React plus Spring Boot web app from scratch. This is the next installment in that series. Forgive me for my stuffed up nose and everything, I am sick, but I still wanted to record this video for you. So in this lesson, we are going to take our previous domain model that we had sort of outlined. If you missed all that, please go back in this playlist in this series to find all those videos. This is, I think, lesson number 5 in this series. So yeah, if you haven't done it yet, stop, go back. And if you haven't done it yet, click like and subscribe to this video. As you all know, that is how all the good YouTubers do it these days. So let's, yeah, hopefully if you're still watching, you are ready to rock. Let's open up our domain model. Okay, so here we are in our domain model. We had said the user to assignment mapping is a one-to-many. One user has many assignments, and we've had sort of outlined how that happens here. From user to assignment, it'll be a one-to-many. If you were to do a bidirectional relationship, meaning you have two relationships pointing back and forth with each other, the assignment would map back to the user as a one-to-one. Okay, well, it's actually, that's physically how it would work, but in the annotations that I'll show you, it's actually called many-to-one, so it's kind of like this, but that's a bit more like a, anyway, it's confusing, I know, but just, you know, getting an understanding of how it works in your mind. If you picked out any one assignment from the list of assignments, that would map back to one and only one user. That assignment can be was created by and is assigned to, well, I shouldn't say assigned to, created by and owned by just one user. So it's kind of like a one-to-one mapping, even though there's a different annotation to use for that. So let's dive into how to map that out, a one-to-many relationship between user and assignment, as well as creating the user and assignment objects. All right, so how we do that is we start off by right-clicking on, I like to right-click on the actual package here to say new class. I want to create a new class. The first class will be the user class, and I want to put it into a different package rather than the one here. So when I right-clicked on the package, this is what it does. It pre-fills the package name, but I also want to add .domain. These objects are considered, or are called domain objects or entities. You could also call this entity or something. I've always gotten used to using domain, and that's what I'm going to use. So, because this is a domain object, which means this class represents a database table. So there is a whole database table that will be reflected by this exact Java object. To do that, you mark it as an entity with @entity, Control-Shift-O to import, and we bring it in from JavaX persistence. Now, the one curveball here is you cannot call this, or just leave it as is, because it's going to create a table based on the name of the class, which is just user. But in the world of MySQL, user as a table is already reserved for something else. It's like a reserved keyword. So we need to override that behavior and choose a different table name by adding the @table annotation, Control-Shift-O. And this comes in from Java persistence, and we add some brackets and we say name for the table name, and I'm just going to add an S. I'm going to pluralize it. But usually you don't pluralize tables, right? Usually you just leave it as a singular, just like we've done here, a single user. But because it is being taken, it is a reserved word. That's the workaround. So, okay. Now we create our fields, our, properties and whatnot. We had outlined this as the fields, role and cohort start date and whatnot. This role I'm going to leave until a later video because this is a bit more complex. I overgeneralized this part. Anyway, there's a cohort start date, and then there's the assignments, which is the one-to-many part of this relationship. But whenever we have, what are these called? Entities. You probably will have an ID, and it probably will be a long. It is the typical data type that we use here. You can use integer. It's just that if your app really takes off, you're good. It's gonna need to change. But anyway, you need to add more room for this. If you have like 1 billion users or something, you might need more room than just an integer. That's why people just generally use long, is from what we've seen, or from what I typically do. Now, let's see. What's the cohort start date? I'm going to use local date, cohort start date. So I'm using local date because I don't want to use local date time because I don't really care about time. All I want is a date here. So if you were to use something like, for example, if you were just use date, which comes from, it's like, you know, Java util date or something. Java util date. This is from like version 1. I forget. 1.1. So this is old school. This is OG. We're talking about with respect to the Java versions. It's a bit outdated at this point, and it's a bit cumbersome to use, which is why I prefer to use local date, which was introduced in, I don't even remember, 1.8. So this is a lot more recent, and it's a lot more tailored to, you know, today's day and age when it comes to working with this stuff. Anyway, I prefer to use local date over date. A user will probably already also have like a username, okay, and probably like a password. We didn't outline that in our document here, or text file, but it probably should. Like I said, role we'll come back to, and then we'll have the relationship, which is what this is all about. So we'll have a list of assignment objects. We haven't created this yet. This doesn't know. It's not going to know what this is. We'll create it in just a moment. Assignments. What I like to do is instantiate it here, because, well, it just avoids null pointer exceptions in the future. Now, it doesn't know what assignment is. I'm just going to say don't import that. I'm going to import, how do I do this? I was going to import list. There we go. Okay, so boom, we have those things, and then as we always do in the world of Java, we have getters and setters. I use Alt-Shift-S, which brings up this menu. You can also get at this menu by right-clicking and going to source, Alt-Shift-S, right? It could be different if you're on a Mac, but I wanted to show you how to get there too. And then you say generate getters and setters, right? A lot of people complain and moan and whine and just melt down and cry and lose their minds over the fact that you have to have all of this extra noise and boilerplate code here. I get it. It's like a little noise. There's ways to get rid of this. You know, as coders, we are such whiners and such privileged people. Anyway, there you go. You can generate the code. Alt-Shift-S-R, select all, enter, done. You never have to think about it. So anyway, I don't think it's a very valid argument for knocking Java for being very verbose. I actually like to see this stuff when I have these code generators that get rid of this noise, quote unquote noise. Like I think Lombok is one of them, Lombok, that gets rid of the need for this stuff. In my mind, I want to see it because it introduces problems because you can't see it. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. So for those of you who complain and whine about this, you know, have some coffee, relax, calm yourself. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to be just fine. All right, so let's create the assignment object as well, the domain object. How I do that now, the reason why I put in this assignment type, even though it doesn't exist, is because I'm lazy. I can hover over it and say, where is it? Create class. I can create the class assignment. Boop. And it put it right into the domain. Boop. Done. It's created it for me. So that's kind of nice, right? Not that this was a lot of work to do, but I'm all about little shortcuts. As you can see now, it's put in this assignment.java file in the domain package. This one, again, entity. Just like we did in the last one, Control-Shift-O to import comes from JavaX persistence. Ta-da! Just like the user, entity. All right, just like we did here with this entity in the user table, user class, I should say. However, we don't need to do this table annotation over here on assignment because it will automatically create a table. It'll say, you know, create table assignment. Come on, like this in the world of SQL, and it'll have the, you know, whatever and the you know, the specs and whatnot for the table. But yeah, it'll create table assignment because it's going to take the name of the class and it's going to do that. And the word assignment, I believe, is not a reserved word in the world of MySQL, so everything should be just fine. Maybe I can do this. Entity will create table called assignment. Like this, based on class name. Same rules apply here. It's probably a good idea to have an ID for your assignment. Okay, and then what other properties do we have here for assignment? We have status, GitHub URL, branch. So these are all string, 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 string. So these 4 things, I'll just copy paste them into here. So private string status, private string GitHub URL, private string branch, private string code review video URL. And what's the last one? Oh, assigned to. User assigned to. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Good. So, let's see. This is going to be a bit of a curveball because this is going to have to be like a... I hadn't planned on doing this one. We probably won't have time to do this one in this video because we're already quite a ways into the video. We'll add this as a to-do later. This one? Okay. So, getting to the code generators. Again, for all of you who lose their minds, watch this. Control-Shift-S-R, select all, generate, and that's the end of the discussion. Do you see how that worked, ladies and gentlemen? Was that so ominous? Was that so hard for you to do? Anyway, okay. So, we have our code here, and we have all of our properties. Let's go ahead and try to create this as a one-to-many relationship. So, I think the way I want to do it is I want to map it out. There's 2 ways to do this. You can map it out as a bidirectional relationship, which means user points to assignments, and the assignment points back to the user. They both have, point to each other. However, having a bidirectional relationship causes a little bit of headache down the road when you're dealing with something like a RESTful interface that we're creating here with our single page application via React on the front end. Getting data from the RESTful interface that we're going to create in the Spring world, in the Java world. Having a bidirectional relationship causes an infinite loop madness. So I'm going to try something a little bit different. Normally I just deal with the headache, but this time I'm going to try to eliminate that headache by having a unidirectional relationship. So forgive me if I go off the rails here and struggle, but hey, this is where a lot of learning happens. I'm going to try to do this as a unidirectional relationship, meaning I'm only going to have the relationship from assignment to user. And if I go back to user here, I'm going to delete the relationship of having assignments here. Okay, so a user is not going to be aware of the assignments. The assignment is only going to be aware of the user. Because I added a new property here, we need to do our Alt-Shift-S, or Alt-Shift-S-R, generate the getter setter for user. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. Sometimes I put my relationship mappings in the on the getters. Some people in the past have criticized, again, everyone likes to nitpick with things. So I'm going to try to appease the nitpickers. Normally I don't do this, but hey, I'm going to put my annotations at the field level. Sure, fine. And I'm going to do this, map this out as a many-to-one relationship. Okay. And I believe, do I need to add, we'll get into cascade types. Fetch, I guess you could do I think default is eager fetch type. So eager means whenever we get an assignment, it will automatically also fetch the user. I think that's okay because it is a many-to-one. It's not that big a deal. And if we're getting rid of all of our bidirectional relationship stuff, if we're only doing unidirectionals, this is actually okay, in my opinion. Is this optional? If set to false, then a non-null relationship must always exist. This is actually optional is true. Okay, you can have, or no, it's false. Right? You cannot have an assignment without a user. Okay, again, you cannot have an assignment that's been created without a user that owns it. It's not optional. This relationship, not optional. Cascade, again, we will get back to that. I think that's okay. So we'll do that, and we'll see how that works when we boot things up. Is that it? Is that all I need to do? Entities here. We've gotten rid of the relationship to assignment here. Assignment is here. We've put in our many-to-one annotation. As I said in my documentation here, we had the one-to-one, which is how, again, essentially it is a one-to-one, but in order to actually map this out, it's called many-to-one because it's the right-hand side of the relationship of a one-to-many, and that's just how the cookie crumbles. All right, so let's boot this up and see what catastrophic errors we find ourselves facing. Catastrophic error number 1. What did Trevor do wrong? No, identify. Oh, right. Okay. Whoopsie. So we have IDs here, which are used to identify the entities, meaning the row of data. Each row of data in a database needs a way to uniquely identify it. How do you do that? You need the @ID annotation. Also comes from JavaX persistence. But also for the world of MySQL, it's also helpful to set a strategy for how to generate this ID. Because if you don't set up a strategy to generate the ID for you, in other words, leverage the database system to generate an ID automatically on your behalf, you're going to have to figure out how to generate this ID, and that's just not something I care to do. So how do you have it generate an ID for you? You say generated value is the annotation. Generated value. Okay, comes from JavaX persistence. Do you see a theme? Hopefully you see a theme. Java persistence, Java persistence, Java persistence. Cool. But a little bit fine-tuning the generated value, you can actually set up a specific strategy. If you don't specify a strategy, it's going to do something kind of wonky. It's going to use a different table to generate IDs and keep track of the IDs. We don't want to do that. We want to leverage the power of MySQL to generate our IDs for us. MySQL can do this. You just have to tell it to use it, right? Identity is the strategy that we're going to use. Indicates that the persistence provider must assign primary keys. The persistence provider, in this case, again, they use these fancy terms and language. It's the MySQL server. Okay, MySQL, the server itself will assign a primary key for us when we use this type, this strategy. Okay, now I just copied this. I'm going to go to user and paste it in because literally for the user, we want to do the exact same thing. For the most part, I'm going to save this. For the most part, for pretty much every entity we create, we're going to do this. We're going to have an ID. We're going to have a generated value for that ID. I say for the most part because sometimes you have a composite key. Sometimes you have something a bit more complex than just a plain old ID that's auto-generated, that's auto-incremented. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For every new user, user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4, user 5. It'll automatically increment. That's what we're currently doing with this strategy. Sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes you want to specify something more specific, something more custom. Then you would not use, you would not use this strategy. You should not use this strategy. You would use a different strategy. But that's much more of an edge case in my opinion. So, okay, let's fire it back up, see how we're doing. All right, we booted up, but I did see an error. Let's go up and see what the error was. Table doesn't exist. Assignment doesn't exist. Why doesn't it exist? That probably means it failed to create the table. So what's the problem? It failed to create the table because it says alter table assignment, add constraint. So it's trying to add a foreign key. References, blah, blah, blah. So why couldn't it do that? There's probably another error above. You have an error in your SQL syntax. Okay. What's the error? Create table, users. Okay, all this stuff. Error executing. Okay, so when you go up, you see it tries to do this create table assignment thing. And I think that one works, but what happens is it tries to create, or maybe it doesn't work. It tries to say create, table assignment, but it cannot do it because there is some sort of exception. Error in the SQL syntax, check the manual. Oh, there you go. To your MySQL Server version, right near the syntax, type equals myISAM. It does not like that. So how do you figure this stuff out? How do I, as a programmer of many, many decades, or a decade and a half, I should say, how does a programmer like myself figure this stuff out? It's so very simple, okay? It's like the same thing I do every single time, but give me a second to blow my nose. There, I edited out nose blow. You probably don't need to hear that. So, it's so simple. You go, you find the last caused by, and I really just take the message, copy the message, copy. Let's hop over to Google, paste. Ladies and gentlemen, I have now solved 80% of your programming problems going forward. Okay? That's all we do. That's all. 15 years of experience. I see an error in my log that I don't remember how to solve. Scroll down to the last caused by, copy message, paste into Google. How many students I have trained, how many times I've been asked this question, how many people have struggled and wasted days or weeks of their lives, how many people have given up on coding because they don't do this. Caused by, copy, paste. First, Stack Overflow. Guys, not hard. Scroll down. Look, big green check mark. Okay? This is probably the solution. This is probably the solution to my problem. So, having said that, it looks like it says it's a dialect problem. Okay? Given that you use whatever DB, you need to use the MariaDB. Well, I'm not using MariaDB. I'm using MySQL. If you're using MySQL, MySQL 5 dialect, 7 dialect. I'm using MySQL 8. Okay? So, MySQL 8. I'm saying MySQL dialect. I believe I'm using MySQL 8. Let me try 8 dialect. Again, I would find out more of this as I go along. When I did more, if I were to do more Googling, I would figure it out. But that is the seed right here, right? I should go here. This is the seed of my problem, right? It's telling me something to do with dialect. So if it doesn't answer my question here, I now have a very good lead that I can follow up with to see what's this dialect thing. Let me learn more about it, right? You scroll down. Oh, look, MySQL 8 dialect. Right? This error may arise with increasing frequency as more organizations move and install MySQL 8, which is what I'm using. So guess what? MySQL 8 dialect. MySQL 8 dialect. Save. Reboot. Sorry, guys. I know I'm getting hyped up here. Look, the error's gone. So, again, I get frustrated because I have to tell my students the same thing so many times. So many times the same thing comes up. The same problem. They don't look at their log. They don't go to the last caused by. They don't copy. They don't paste to Google. Just like 80% of your problems. Gone. Poof. Okay? Oh, anyway. Okay. Trevor, how do you do it? How are you so fast? How do you figure this stuff out? I'll never be as good as you. Dude, I copy paste and I Google. Okay. I'm done. So, our tables are created. Yay! And that's pretty much it. Now we can go to our database over here. Let me refresh. And look, tables. Ta-da! We have a users table with our fields that we expect. We go to assignment. The assignment has a user ID. Voila! Magnificent. Magnifique. We're done. So thanks so much for watching this lesson. Give it a thumbs up if you like my angry rants, or if you learned something new. I'm not always this. Maybe because I'm a little sick that I'm getting passionate. Let's use the word passionate. Yeah, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you want to keep following this series, or just learn a ton about the Java language itself. I'm a big Java fan because there are tons and tons of job opportunities in the world of Java. And if you're interested in learning yourself fast, I also have a boot camp, right? I have a boot camp with currently 6 staff members working with me to help you guys not only learn how to code, but get jobs, okay? Start very successful careers as programmers. We have a 96% placement rate right now. I'm a terrible marketer, so you don't see a whole lot of marketing materials going out about the boot camp because I focus on helping my students, okay? I'm not one of those boot camps that just publishes a bunch of fluff all over the place and does false advertising and whatnot, because I care. I give a crap about my students, so I focus on my students, and we have very good outcomes, so our numbers speak for themselves. So if you're interested in learning how to code, so much so that you can get a job and start and launch a beautiful, beautiful career as a programmer and become as passionate as me, maybe, then please go to coderscampus.com/bootcamp. Again, I can plug it in here as a thing, coderscampus.com/bootcamp to go and apply today. If you have like less than 20 hours a week available, don't worry, don't apply. We want people who have at least 20 hours a week in their schedule. I mean, maybe if you have 15 hours a week, that we can maybe make that work. But hey, this doesn't come for free, ladies and gentlemen. This doesn't come without a lot of hard work, pain, and struggle, and a lot of copy pasting into Google. So this is just the way it goes. So you can go to coderscampus.com/bootcamp to apply for our next bootcamp. We are currently launching them every month. If you want to get a job and start your career as a programmer, check it out. We have lots of great stories from students who have done just that, and maybe you can be our next success story. So, cool. Thank you so much for subscribing and liking. Thank you so much for checking out the bootcamp. And until next time, take care of yourself. Happy learning, and bye for now.